Okay, that was a very bright white screen to start the stream with. That's not very good. Sorry about that. Okay, so I was watching Dan's stream and I realized what time it was. Okay, so as much as I would love to continue on with Godot and doing some game dev because it is a lot of fun, I do need to get this moving forward. So we're going to focus some energy on this today. Unfortunately, as well, the part I am the weakest at which would be the UI. Streamer mode. Let's forget that. Okay. Oh. The dogs are fiercely protecting the house. So what I have so far is I have no ability to log out, so I need a log out button on here at the very least. So let's do app log out button. All right, so if you can log out, so we have the registration screen. I'm going to minimize that a little bit so I do have light and dark mode support, so if I figure it out, I can switch the themes around. That'd be awesome. Okay. So I have the account registration working, and I can sign into the application, and I can log in, and then when I log in, I get to here. Okay, so what I need to do today is I need to figure out how to lay this page out, and I am going to try and build it on top of a template, well, on top of a design that I do like. The challenge is the template that I want to use, right? I could go and get a template, but they want to charge me $50 for that template, I believe it is. Which, if I'm going to spend $50 right now on anything, it is not going to be on buying a template for this. I would rather figure it out myself. Is it Freya? No, it's not Freya. Templates, discover, store, prime faces, prime energy, yeah, $60 for the template. So as good as this is, as good as the tooling is, I'm not spending $60 on a layout. I just can't. There's no way I can justify spending that sort of money on something that I like. This layout, I like the design. I think I am going to tinker with having even in dark mode, having a lighter area, whether it be white or like an off gray in the center. And I'm going to focus on the dark mode right this second, and then try and flip it back. So you can see I'm trying to mimic that in some way, shape, or form. But I'm not paying $60. So I'm going to have to learn my own way through that. Because, yeah, I can't afford to be spending that sort of money. So the way I'm seeing this is I need to basically separate the page into that. This is my router outlet, so this is the actual page body. This is my navigation. Header bar up here, and up here what I want to do is actually make it so that will be a toggle eventually, where you can press that and it'll do a drop down menu and can switch between planning or whatever, right? That's kind of the goal. I think Jira does their logo up there, yeah. Emporium guy, thank you very much for the follow. Welcome in. So this is not somewhere I am super comfortable with, so I'm going to mess around with all sorts of things. Now, you can set manual colors with Tailwind, and that's kind of what I did here. So I'm using Tailwind for layout and PrimeNG for the controls. I'm not using Prime Faces, I think it is. Hello, how are you doing today? I'm not using Prime Faces to do the layout. It's just whatever the little CSS framework is that's kind of Bootstrap / Tailwind styled. So I'll stick with Tailwind for layout and use the controls, which I've now figured out. So I'm not bad. I'm the CSS stuff, the layout stuff is pretty much my weakest area, but it's an area I know I have to focus on right now. So this application is an Agile Platform tool. So I call it an Agile Platform tool. What it really is a planning and work tool. So the focus is on gathering information and doing the planning for work to be done, and with the aim of making it so a developer doesn't actually have to spend much time in the tooling to be able to focus on the work they need to focus on. So things like planning and requirement gathering, etc., is the focus of this particular piece right this second, and then moving forward into traditional, Scrum boards, etc. But I feel that those are more of a management concern than they are a developer concern for the most part. So, yeah. So today I am going to try and lay this out. I'm going to stick with these colors for right this second because I like the colors, but obviously I'm going to have to figure out if I'm going to put a light and dark mode toggle in there, these can't stay. So, yeah. So I need to figure out. Well, here's what I need to do. I need to actually, what is it? What is the tool I'm thinking of? Okay, I'm going to move this over here just because it doesn't really add anything to the stream for you to see that refreshing, etc. When I'm not even getting it. So let's tinker with this. So if class equals hello, I got no skills. How you doing? I really need to get the YouTube chat joined in somehow. Restream does not do what I want it to do. Hey, Captain Fuba, how you doing? How's things today? So, as much as I started by saying, as much as I would love to say I can do Godot every day, this is my primary focus for my stream. Godot, game dev stuff. I've really enjoyed doing that the last couple of days. It's been a lot of fun and the learning's been nice and quick. Well, the learning's been at moments drinking from a fire hose, but unfortunately, or fortunately, my focus is on my app for the next couple of days. I was just watching the newest about Windows wanting to use AI to record all your stuff on your own system. I swear, MS is slightly Linux. So I'm a Microsoft developer, right? I have been for many years, and I looked at the build schedule this year, and I only picked out two sessions that I would like to watch. One of them being C#13, right? The rest was just so full of AI that I just was not interested. It is making me concerned that I should spend a little bit of time making sure I follow some of those things, because obviously our careers are starting to get affected by AI in all forms. But yeah, I'm surprised Microsoft hasn't actually switched to being a Linux distro at this point. It'd be way cheaper. So yeah. So do I actually? I want CSS Grid, don't I? Really? Um, Sadly, the more they try to put AI into, the more I am forced to consider switching. The only reason I'm on Windows is because my gacha game called Honkai Star Rail and WP. Yeah. I've seen AI can't do complex stuff. AI can't write too much by itself. Rather, it needs someone with a bit of experience to help it. But it's evolving fast. I mean, it's quickly becoming. I mean, I don't think AI is. I mean, AI is a buzzword at this point, right? It it covers all these different things. Um, yeah, for stuff. Trying to be helpful, so under the guise of trying to be helpful, which is actually just, we've for many years been asked, do you want to let us record your usage and report your usage statistics to the company? And you uncheck that box, right? Putting AI in there is just a sneaky way of allowing that to happen with more detail, right? Probably less context to it, but more detail for the end. The people at OpenAI are making the same AI that will replace them in the future. I don't think we're going to be at that point in the very near future, but the long term, it may make some tasks pretty much unnecessary. When we can say, hey, analyze this data set and give me interesting points, that removes some analytical needs. That I can see it being very helpful for, right? Because I remember, you used to have to train the data sets and try and target it at what you wanted to, the things you wanted to focus on to get any sort of intelligent output. Well, when it can decide for itself what's intelligent, that's a step forward. That AI will come to all the systems. The question is how. Yeah, we were having a bit of a discussion over this year's build in Discord. Yeah, more than one line, by the way. It's it's very full of AI. I noticed. It's I don't know. I'm at the point where I'm thinking maybe I should spend a bit of time doing a little bit of studying and see how. Yeah. For the boring, repetitive tasks, search, compile information, data analysis is a great tool. Yeah. I don't like the idea of it monitoring what I'm doing though, and trying to be smart about it. Right. It's if I let's see if it right. It's trying to help me out here, right? That sort of stuff. It's not always right. A lot of times it is, but which does speed me up a little bit, but I don't want to become too reliant upon that. I definitely have thoughts on transformation, evolution, software development. Yeah. Yeah. It's things are changing for certain. And maybe my attitude towards the AI usage and it replacing developers is a little skewed because of, I'm not in the beginning of my career, so it's not really as much of a stress. Whereas if you're looking at becoming a software developer and everyone's saying, "Oh, AI is going to replace developers," then you've got a few more questions to ask, right? What was I going over here for? Oh yeah, Tailwind CSS. Oh yeah. I can imagine a custom AI that follows you around on all the systems that you interact with will be the future. It will learn all your habits, routines, and that can't live in the cloud or be a service from a company. Yeah, I mean, we are getting to that Star Trek-esque computer, right? Resume my yeah, yeah. That'd be good to hear some of your opinions on that. Okay, so grid rows, grid columns. This feels like it's not auto. Template columns. Okay, so if we do div class grid rows, grid calls 2. Yeah, 0. That's quite interesting. What does that do? Interesting. That's what that did. Yeah, I don't know. AI is I don't like the amount of content that Build has around AI. I was really disappointed to see there was very little developer content. Me Oops, been looking since she started. What I say? Hi, Copperbeardy. How you doing? Hopefully well. Session catalog. So, session catalog, next gen AI, accelerate insights with real time Azure SQL data, Copilot, AI, plugins for Copilot. Right, there's not a lot in here that is not AI focused. I find that to be very concerning. And that's what it looked like when I navigated through the session catalog. It looked pretty much like that. Because I went and tried to find I went for developer tools, and it was pretty slim pickings overall. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much one of the ones I want. I actually think two of the ones I want to watch are at the same time, so I just put them in there just to track. But yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Okay, so div. So when you're doing the column layout, grid calls for. So that's giving me two columns. I need the first column. I'm struggling to visualize. So it's going to make it. So that's going to be column 1, and that's going to be column 2. But do I want? Do I want two? Do I want 2 rows, each with 2 columns? How do I space these properly? This is where I'm going to learn most of my stuff, right? Because this is where I struggle the most. It's like understanding the layout styles and understanding how to do these things is not something. It's something I always muddle through, right? Because I don't like touching the UI. The reason I'm doing the HTML and CSS now rather than trying to design it is because I want to see if I can get the layout I want, and once I've got a design I like, then I can try and decide whether I'm going to use the UI kit for Figma. Buy the Figma UI kit because it's $50 again, more expenditure, or I just carry on moving forward with the design I want. Because again, my plan for this was always to try and hire someone to do this, but at the same, if I don't spend some time focusing on these workflows and figuring out what I want to do, I'm going to struggle to design the features later because I'm just building features based upon the back end and not thinking about the use case in the front end. So that's why I've pivoted a little bit. So this application, if you haven't seen it before, I can't show you the UI, obviously, but the application is a how do I term it? It's not microservices. It's broken down into these component pieces, and each component piece can have many or one service. It uses Kafka, localhost 5000. That's the planning. Load from file. So the way it works is I have several components broken out to avoid the monolith, right? And I'm using Kafka as a messaging system for integration data. So I'm not using it as point-to-point service bus. I'm using it as pure, here's data. You can have that data whichever way you want. So the ticketing system, the planning system, which is where the focus is right now, tenant management, being able to sign up and log in, etc., have your user profile, etc., there is all in tenant management. So these are write databases, essentially. Once they have data stored, they publish integration events. Kafka right now has a consumer, and there's a GraphQL API sat here with a consumer database here, and the client uses an API gateway to send data and receive. Well, it can't. The API gateway I have right now can't use GraphQL. I'm gonna have to switch that out, but the client ultimately will receive from the GraphQL side. So the client is built using Angular and GraphQL to query the data. The reason I'm using Kafka is because it allows me to distribute that data without any intent. Yeah, it is scalable. This is an application design that I've been playing around with for years. In terms of, I've been tinkering with bits and pieces. I've implemented a lot of this in production. So I have implemented a system of this nature, but some new, the ability to build this myself has allowed me to experiment a little bit more, and I'm more comfortable with this design than ever before. But using Kafka, I can extend this system pretty quickly without changing any of these core systems. So yeah, and ultimately, that's not tenant management, that's stories. So that's the actual story system. The reason I'm doing this is because I believe that there are some things that are able to be done better with the way we plan and gather requirements for stories, and that the developer does not need to necessarily be involved in most of it. If you look at tools like Jira, if you've used them, if you consider their application for the developer is a very, very, very small component of the overall application. Most of the application is about management, right? It's about trying to get visibility into what people need to do the job. It's not about actually what the job is. So as a developer, you really don't care about so much of the system. So I feel that there's some things I can do that would definitely improve that. So that's what this is built out to be. So each of these might be their own monoliths, if we're using terms. But they are very, why can't I think right a second? There's a, I'm trying to avoid using certain terms because people kind of latch onto things. So I'm trying to train myself to not. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's ever read this article. So anyway, the application, I'm more than welcome. I'm more than happy to talk about the application, by the way. Any questions on it or any thoughts or experiences, I'm happy to kind of share. But what I was tending to do is focus my efforts on what it is I needed on the server side and what features I needed to support there. What I wasn't considering is how I was going to implement them in the client side. So when I recently wrote a feature, realized that it was wrong, ripped it all out. No, Emporium. This is not open source at this point. There are components of it that do open source. There are the Kafka components that I use to hook everything up and distribute the stuff. That's all a library that's open source, and some of the pieces I've added on for Mediator, because I intend this to become an application. I'm treating this as if I'm going to make it a real product right this second. If that ever changes, if I decide that I don't have the time or energy, I will instantly open source it. But I'm more than happy to show stuff on the stream, to answer questions and go through it. And it's kind of why I stream it, because streaming the actual development is probably useful to people who have not necessarily experienced building an application like this. Are microservices on the way out? Maybe going back to monolithic. So yes, microservices are kind of a buzzword that I don't think anyone truly understands. Well, very few people. It's like REST APIs. People don't necessarily understand all that goes into making a true RESTful API in the vision as it was laid out initially. They put HTTP verbs on top of an API and call it RESTful, and that's not really what was intended with RESTful APIs. But we all kind of have our own interpretations of how things should be done, because we all gather that information. We hear the buzzword and we go off and find different sources and different interpretations and understandings of how things work. So this is, so I'm not, what's the, my brain's blanking on this. I can't think. 1 second. They're implementing a responsive front-end design now. Responsive from the perspective of mobile friendly. It's not a key focus. I am having some real brain fog today. Modular monolith. So there's a YouTuber that has done several videos on this. I'm going to link to him now. The modular monolith. And again, I'm not even sure that I'm necessarily aligning to a modular monolith. But ultimately, these are modules or components, as I keep referring to them as. And each one can have many or one services, because this has tickets, has a consumer service for Kafka and an API service. API service, no other services, API service, API service. API service and consumer service. So there's multiple components to each piece. So this would be more of a modular monolith. But yeah, Milan's really, really good. Got some good stuff in there. I was implementing a responsive. So it's not my primary focus. Mainly because I don't think this application is going to be a mobile friendly application. So it's not something I'm going to put all the energy into, but it is something that would be nice to make sure that it can scale down and display on a phone at the very least. So it will be something I test. But I feel this type of application doesn't really necessarily suit a mobile format. If anything, I have to remove information. So those are the columns. So the way the problem I'm having right now, the mental block I'm having right now is if these are columns, then my first column has 2 rows. The first row is the same size, and in the second column, the first row is the same size. Or I have 2 rows, and row 1 is the same size, but column 1 in each row is the same size, and yeah. So probably 1 rows, right? And then these are rows, and then class equals grid calls to div class equals width. So I suppose this is going to change the responsive side of things. W8 div class equals width 4, and then there, that's the same, and the router outlet goes in there. Yeah, that's not going to work. Now I need to figure out a way of displaying that. Border green. I don't know what I'm missing. There's something I'm missing about adding borders in Tailwind, because I can never get borders to display. Hello. BG. Okay. 283593. So that's that. And then this is going to be 16, and then the BG is going to be... Okay. H. So how do you... So the question I've got there is, how do you make the page fill out now? I thought it was H4, it's not. I obviously want the left-hand nav to go right down the page. Oh, it'd be flex, wouldn't it? So that would be flex H4. No. Oh, grid and flex though. Okay, grid is type of... Flex. No. Huh. So what I've got right now is that. So two boxes that are almost the same size. So I need to learn how to pull this content out. This is going to be justify item start. No. With full. And this is the problem of being... Ah, there we go. That's why. So technically it is to the start. So why does that end up over there? But this one... So the problem is I don't know what to look at on the documentation as to how I'm going to work that out, other than just experimenting and trying figuring it out. And when the combination clicks, I can understand some of the classes, but I've got to get to that point where I understand the layout. And this is not something I enjoy doing on stream as much as doing the regular coding. But this is part of the process, right? This is part of what you have to do if you're building your own application. If you're working in an organization, this stuff is still probably necessary, right? But you're often given a design to work with, so you aim for that design. I've worked with people that are very talented on the front end before, so I've normally had it taken away in terms of I just have to do the little bits. So basically, I need to deep dive into Tailwind. I think I'm going to get a little bit more experience in Tailwind, absolutely. The problem is from these examples, I can't. I can't visualize how I'm meant to do it. It's just not something I'm very good at. Once I do it, that's different. But call span star utilities to make an element span n columns. Right. So I don't want. So I've got my rows. I've got the first row's fine. This would have navigation in here. Figma, I know they use it a lot to visualize it. So the challenge is with Figma, and I was one line, which I don't know. I think anyone in here is going to know one line, but the other day, one line was spending some significant time within Figma building out the components and demonstrating how to build a component library. And the sheer amount of time that you would spend in there just scares me. I mean, again, like you said, once you get used to it, it gets a lot faster. But the issue I have with Figma, specifically right this second, is I don't have these controls. Nice. Right. So this was my initial Figma markup, and it's close because I actually mimicked the design, but I don't have these controls, right? So there are no, even if I get the layout in Figma the way I want it to do, it's not going. I'd have to pay for it to export the code for me, and even then, it wouldn't do it in Tailwind. So that's the challenge. I'm kind of getting used to using Figma a little bit more, but yeah, I've got a lot more to learn. So that's why this is I may be making this more difficult, but yeah, 10 pots. That's Figma style. Yeah, it's a Figma style tool. Well, I mean, it's Figma style, right? This looks very familiar from from one line stream. Yeah, or free. But so, does this support having that'd be interesting in doing? Does this support UI kit? Right. So Figma has one of the things that would be tempted to do if I get to the point where I'm comfortable with this is I am so disorganized. Prime NG. So go to Prime NG and go to templates, no, theming. They have. Is it theming that I'm thinking of? Oh, Figma UI kit. There you go. So they have the UI kit, and that will import into Figma, and then I can use the controls and stuff. I did take a quick look at Figma. Again, I'm not sure what for Tailwind. There was something. That's export. But like there's colors, font families, text sizes, box shadow, border radius. So it's not even, that's not an official one, I don't think. So I'm not entirely sure. Doesn't look like any of them are actually official because I looked for Tailwind. Because yeah, because that would be the ideal way, right? The workflow would be either I use, yeah. So the appeal of this is if I get to the point where I'm comfortable with the control suite, I will spend the $50 to buy the UI kit stuff, and then I can import these into Figma, and then I've got all the buttons and all the variants all there for me already, right? Which is what you were building the day one line, right? With all the variables. Oh, $100, sorry. I thought that was $50 the other day. I swear this pricing went back up. I swear that was $50 the other day. $100, that's a little bit harsher. Oh no, I'm confusing the templates. This was $100, but either way, it would be worth it if I was going to use it all the time, right? Because if I'm building a full application, then this would be worth it. So, but if I could find something that would allow me to export from Figma or whatever, or even Penpot with Tailwind, that would be useful because then I could just build the design and do all this. So why does that not? But that's set the same way. No worries. So why does that? So if I move this here, let's make sure that I'm not seeing the same thing on both sides. I am seeing the same thing on both sides. Why is that then? Grid calls to. So let me move that over there. So grid call 3, gap 4. So so it will automatically deal with the number of the wrap, so they become part of that. And the second set of columns call span, but I don't want a call span there, so that will automatically do that. Again, I don't need them broken out like this. Apex, good morning. How you doing? The to the responsive thing, that will have to come later. I am struggling my way through Tailwind and grids, CSS grids today. So why does that move? That's not necessary, surely. No. BG. $816, that's fine. Bit worrying that that second row takes on. Tailwind. Grid fill page. That's just a documentation. Autofill, autofit. Okay. Why do I have to do that? So fill, that would be auto columns. I like how they stopped showing images to give you the visualization. Size of implicitly auto calls. But that's not going to do. That's figuring it out, right? Auto calls max. That's interesting. That's what that did. Auto. So that would be. So that'd be auto calls max. Grid rows 2. Calls 2. That's interesting. Why? Control the size of implicitly created grid columns. An ad is going to start in a few minutes. I do apologize for ads. Auto rows, sizing implicit creating grid rows. What's a flow? So what's a flow row? Flow row to control how the placement algorithm works for grid layout. So we do grid, flow, row, grid. But no, they don't combine because then you've got grid columns. So you start at columns. Let's go back again. But hold on, grid rows 2. So then what is div? Hello, div, goodbye. What does that do? Hello, goodbye. So I've got 2 columns. Cool world. Okay, so that gives us that and that. So that's left nav. So that would be router outlet. Nope, that would not be router outlet. World would be router outlet. Nav. Width 16. But that's not BG 283.593. So that doesn't now collapse. I feel like I'm missing something. Like I'm missing an understanding of. So that is allowing me to set at the top level that this is going to follow that format, right? So everything underneath here. So rather than me saying grid calls to here, right? Yeah, that'll still work because they're just kind of cascading under each other. But now if I do that, 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 yeah, nav switches to the right. So now this is BG amber, right? It's oversized. That's awesome. But then this content is now stuck out over there. So why is that stuck out over there? Is it automatically filling out the page? I believe it is because of what I saw before. Because if we put a header across this, BG, right, because that's now column. Now that's a row. But that needs to be grid. Let's do that. So that would be nested grid. So do I combine the styles to just have one grid and then lay out which is a column and row? Or do I make nested grids? So definitely make this easier somehow. Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to use the AI. We're going to give that a go. Using Tailwind, how can I create a I can describe it. I'm very bad at this. Using the actual classes. Let's see what that gets us. I mean, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Kinda. I mean, calls auto 1. So that's what fills it. Okay, so why are you not giving me? Normally you give me that. Doesn't have the IntelliSense for that. Call span equals 1. Don't think you need the call span, but okay. Padding 4, background great. So, but they did not make it. Where's the nav? Navigation. Oh, it did make left-hand navigation, kinda. Where's the header? But that gets pumped down there. So this is... Okay, so that's it was that to be the content, okay. But it's still nowhere near what I wanted, right? Because it's got grid calls 2. With 16. Interesting. So what's how do I learn enough about this to understand what I'm actually changing with every single thing, right? It's not just markup, it's not just the CSS classes. I've got to figure out, I want this to be over here. This should go across the top, right? So this panel here should go right across the top. This content here should go up into this left-hand corner. That's what I need. How do I achieve that? Why does it keep doing that? Why does this move over to the right-hand side of the screen? Let's call... Should that be flex call though? Okay, that makes no difference. That works. Like that's clearly the right thing to do, right? The navigation there. The difficulty with making this responsive will be going over this and figuring out, okay, this style needs... So I need to understand how the styles apply. I need to understand what pieces do what. Because when I come back to say, okay, when I size this down to a phone screen, this navigation is going to disappear. And it's going to go somewhere else, right? I think challenge number 1 is figure out how to get this to fill out over here, right? I want it stuffed up against this. That makes no difference. Flex. Interesting. So the flex is what's doing that because it's saying, hey, just butt up against each other. That doesn't make a difference at that point. Flex row. Flex call. Did that make up a style before? Did Gemini just make that up? Yeah, it did. That's not a thing. It's not just there was no documentation. It's not a thing. Okay. You can then things to... Is that FR Auto? No. Thinks it's a thing. I mean, that's a column by virtue of being there. So this is the sort of stuff that would normally, if I struggle too much with this stuff, I will normally just step away from it, right? And I can't choose to do that. I have to push forward with this, right? I have to figure out, how do I learn this? How do I understand this better for me, right? You might be sat there and seeing this and thinking, hey, you're really struggling for no reason. You could be doing this, right? And at this point, trying to figure out the Figma side of things might actually be easier because it might actually give me the styles I need, right? But none of those Figma plugins I saw provided layout. They all provide fonts and styles, etc., but they don't colors, etc., but they don't provide the markup. And again, I can't export from that because, as far as I understand, I can't use Figma for that. Let's go and see what PenPot provides out of the box. Talking of AI, you have to answer a ton of questions just to get into PenPot. I kind of like the struggle for myself. The way I've been approaching Figma is that I'm trying to imagine myself being only a designer that will hand off the designs to a developer. So I try to not think about the part where I'll have to eventually turn the design into code, even though that is nearly impossible. Yeah, that's where I want to be. I genuinely do want to be in that position where I can say, okay, well, now I know what the workflows can look like. Build a workflow, dream it up in Figma, experiment with it there, right? And then say, now export it and not worry about that development side. It's very hard because obviously you're thinking, oh, well, I need to go to this source and get this data list and I need this piece and I need this piece. But you have to kind of put that to one side and do it and then worry about those concerns later because they're not. But you've always got to ask yourself, how much do you hold back there? Because obviously you understand, well, that list isn't actually available. So what are that's a whole lot of development to get that data. So you gotta do that. Yeah, but I don't know. Wow. Prototype, inspect, design, inspect. Okay, so Penpot doesn't really support, from what I can see so far, doesn't support any sort of plugins or assets. Libraries. No, doesn't really have any shared libraries for Tailwind, etc. So we'll come back to Penpot later. That's a really good suggestion to not have a cost. I guess a little bit more loose for me since I don't use CSS frameworks, so I know that there aren't very many constraints around what I make in Figma, how it. Right, and that's actually part of my challenge here. Right, I want to use a library for layout because I think that I'm going to get more consistency, and I don't want to get. The irony is I don't want to get in the weeds. But I'm in the weeds, right? I'm in the weeds because I've got to learn how to use the tool to do what I want to do. Whereas there'd be alternatives to this if I wasn't using a framework. So the pros and cons are definitely there. But it means that using Figma is going to be much harder because then I can once I get the actual design, I could potentially make all the components in Figma if I don't want to spend $100 on the design files. Right, I could make them and then lay them out. But if I can't export it because I can't use the layout, then it's going to be even harder. But this is probably what turns me off UI the most, is the amount of struggle you have to go through to get layout in the page. Once it works, and it's working nicely, it can be a lot of fun. I just gotta figure out why is that. So is that splitting the page? It doesn't look like it, does it? It looks like maybe it's 50-50. Kind of is, isn't it? So it's automatically making the columns the same size. Honestly, I didn't have as strong of a resistance to using a framework. I see a lot of benefit to it, but I always fell back on just rolling my own as I go. Ah, there we go. Grid calls. Why do I have to do it that way? So, 3EM, 1FR. What's FR again? CSS measurements. CSS units. There is no FR. That's not a CSS unit. Free space, okay. So does that change? There we go. Not quite. Because then what's taking over there? Navigation. Ah, there you go. So width 24. Now that's the challenge, because now that's close to what I want. However, you see here I have W24. I don't think I can use W24 there. Right? No, I can't. So I have to use 6 REMs there. So I have to know how big that is. So if I change that, then that's going to get out of whack. Thinking of the motion rings split up evenly into FR. Okay. So we're getting there. Kind of. So that's great if I have the columns. Now I need So this would be router outlet. So that's my body. Um, we're getting there. We're getting there. I don't mind if it happens to be two columns. I'll figure out the top bar separately. That's not really a concern. Height. $16. Header. Okay. Nav. So this is where I'm now going to potentially mix in. Sorry. A panel menu. Don't think this is what I want. Steps, tiered menu. I don't want tiered menu. Breadcrumbs. I don't want mega menus. Menu bars, definitely not. Panel menu. Accordion and tree components. So I don't want that. Yeah. So the benefit of using something like that is I can use the control and feed and can kind of create a separate file containing just the nav items, and then the style can be done in one way. Okay. List none. Space Y4. Why is that? Padding 4. Align. Justify. No, because that's not. What's that like? That's so. When it had the word navigation, it wasn't. Apply a class equals I class equals pi. Is it pi? I think it is pi. Prime image. Nope. I had this the other day. Prime icon, sorry, not prime image. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. Oh, now it's going to start in a few minutes. Apologies if you get caught by that. Okay. Let's continue this. So, again, I don't... I'll forgive you this time. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. This isn't something I necessarily enjoy doing, right? It's not... Doing this as on the stream as a struggle is not something that is necessarily fun. But it is something that a lot of us are going to struggle with, right? It's not our comfort zone for certain. So it's worth putting the effort in. It's worth figuring out how this works. So put some stuff in here. Hello. So this looks good so far. I don't mind if I don't get that top left corner, if I can get it looking like this, because I can always put some padding in and make the menu work that way, right? I just got to get the icons in there. And I thought I had them. Prime ng icons. So prime icons. So there's an entire ecosystem around the icons. Yeah, I did have it. List. What do I use for planning? Plan. No. Book. PyBook. That was right. Let's use PyBook. Oh, there you go. So let's have a look. There's our little icon. This should navigate back. Navigate back. Okay, so this is router link equals planning items. There you go. There's my new button. Pretty sure I should have had content there. Div. Class equals with full height 24 home. Let's see how much that looks like what I want it to do. So the height there is 16, right? BG 3F 51B5. Yeah. There we go. And then class. Oh, that changed that though. That changed that to the right size. Now, how do I make these bigger? Is the challenge there. I apologize. I'll move this over here again. I work this way a lot. I don't mind flicking back and forth, but when you're streaming it, you got to remember that that flickering can create problems for people, and I don't want that to be an issue. So what I'll do is I'll do the layout until I get comfortable that it's looking good, and then we'll move back to that. Okay. So this will be right now this will be home. A router link equals planning right this second. Yeah. So this one, that should be that, I think, if I'm doing it the right way. This is relative to where it is. This will create problems later on. I'm going to have some fun doing that. So I can either do /planning items, I think, to make it explicit, and that way. Because if I just did /planning items, it would go to /planning. It's all relative to that. So that's navigating now. Let's make the icon class equals text. What color do I want to make that on that background? White text to Excel. Oh, that doesn't scale the icon. That's not good. That scales it. Okay, so on the actual icon it does. What's kind of gray? So the one thing I'm not doing here, and I should be looking up this at this point, especially this point, right? I should be focusing on the accessibility. So the biggest problem I have right now is obviously that's a link. So if I'm using iconography to navigate, then that's a little bit difficult because it relies upon, hey, that user's going to understand this. I want the application to be easy, but I don't want the application to be, what's the word? Not, do I mean verbose? I don't want a lot of words everywhere, right? So how do I achieve that? And even if I don't use words here, right? I could do blank. Right, I could do that. Why will that work? Justify. What's going to need justification there? Everything's going to need justification. But that's not going to do that. Yeah. Let's put the second link in there, and then we can worry about that. Planning initiatives. That one is going to be idea pi light bulb. Pi. So iconography is great, but you've got to assume that everyone understands. Oh, Fish and Apple, how are you doing? That everyone understands what it is you're trying to point them at. List. Another alternative to doing this, by the way, would be to try and use Tailwind's. So I do have access to Tailwind UI. They do have some, and this is what I was using originally, right? But the problem with this is it's not. These are control designs; they're not controls. So I can't really use them without writing all the code for them, and that's starting to take its sweet time, more than this. So I'm just going back and forth, struggling with which technique should I use? Vertical navigation. See, this is an option, right? I could use something like this. Role list. I think that was something I had on it. It didn't like that. Oh, there we go. The element UL has an implicit role of list. Defining this explicitly is redundant and should be avoided. Right. So what else can it be? Role equals menu. Non-interactive elements should not be assigned interactive roles. Okay. So this style of menu is an option. The reason I didn't want that is because there's a lot of, I want to be able to use as much of this space as possible, and having a large menu creates a problem. I could put expand collapse in there. That's an option. But again, it's yet more time, energy, etc. So we'll worry about that later on. What's bugging me more? So initiatives, planning, home. So my nav is working there, if looking a little bit on the rough side. The app's running, so So I think I'm gonna drop the wording for right this second. I'm going to go and look at accessibility. So using the right elements, good semantics, text alternatives, so the alt tags on there. So ARIA is screen readability. Nice figure. And these are the sorts of things you just learn as you do. It's really good to meet someone who is very good at this sort of stuff, because then you can really dig into how much it means, and being able to have it demonstrated to you, what the difference is between good UI and bad UI do is quite fascinating. There's some UI stuff today in Blazor Server. So I think Blazor Server is great. The Razor Editor, though. Uh-huh. I don't know. Okay, that spaces them out a bit more. Let's do PB4. That's not padding that, is it? PT4. That pads that out. Still not wholly sold on that. That's a little better. First issue, I can't turn off the auto format, which by itself also almost makes me quit. Yeah, Blazor's the. I like breaking the code into the code behind file in Blazor. I like. I do in general like the fact that I can use C# in there. I just think sometimes it makes it more confusing, not less. Bayardith, welcome in. Thank you very much for the follow. Can you ask a question? Absolutely. I may or may not have an answer, but you can ask. And then it loses the IntelliSense stuff, which can only restore with the VS restart. Oof. Hi, Canny. How you doing? I have to glance over there because that tells me that you did the /me. Otherwise, it just looks like you just wrote that as a as a chat message. Doesn't differentiate there. Brian, hello. How you doing? Welcome in. Thank you very much for the raid. Appreciate it. What have you been doing today? Full boss. Summoning successful. When I check job requirements, I can see they want to know knowledge about Agile from programmers. Is it methodology or program? What programmers using it for? CI/CD, planning tasks, etc. I was working on accessories again. Nice. A good stream. So Agile is a methodology by Adith. In the context, the way I put it in the stream title, the Agile planning. If you've seen tools like Jira, it was okay. Not much progress was made, but it was fun, and I made a dumb accessory. As long as it was fun. Progress doesn't always need to be made. So for me, I've been trying to build the UI for my app. So this is the Agile Platform tool that I'm building. Right now, it doesn't look very good, but it will look better, I promise. That's why I'm putting so much effort into this UI stuff. But let me. I might have to learn Jira very well before start job, or I might only to know basics. Jira is a tool that a lot of companies do use, and the problem is that Agile itself is a practice. It's not an actual piece of software, right? But the problem is we put the tools around the practice, and Jira is a common one to see in businesses and organizations. You don't have to learn anything about it before you go in there. If you're going in as a new developer, as a junior developer, you're going to be shown the tools. So Agile is something you can pick up. It's not something you need to know. it comes from, as far as I understand it, there's this group of developers years ago got together and wrote this Agile manifesto, right? And basically their focus was on trying to develop good software in a timely manner without too much overhead. So they have these individuals and interactions over processes and tools, which is ironic considering we put so many tools around the process. Working software over comprehensive documentation, right? Not writing stuff you don't need, not writing a load of stuff that is just fluff. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. So you're working with the customer to give them what they want. Responding to change over following a plan. Understanding that software sometimes doesn't go to plan and reacting to that is important. So you should be able to respond to the change. And the harder you're making software, because the more rigid you've made it. So a lot of these, Robert Martin, who's one of the original members, is a big author of books on clean code, etc. And these kind of go hand in hand with that way of thinking. Some places don't use Jira. I don't think I would even consider Jira a skill when hiring someone, just assuming they get into the job. Perhaps wrong by me. I want to know less about Jira. I want to know less about Jira, and it's why I'm building this, right? This might not look like much right now, but there's more to show when I get it working again. My music. I don't have any music. If I have music playing, I have no idea where from. I'm going to have to look for 20 minutes after the end of my lesson because the dog needs to watch. Ryan, thank you very much for the raid. I do appreciate it. I appreciate you coming in and giving the raid. I'll be ending in a little while anyway. But yeah, thank you very much for the raid. I do appreciate it. Scrum is a process that trumps all. I like to know if they're familiar with the tools, though. Some tooling is good, but I think, again, the problem I have with the tooling, like, I don't want the developer to necessarily be super familiar with how to use Jira, because that means they've spent a lot of time using Jira. So I want to know that they know what a Scrum board looks like. There you go, done. The workflow can be taught. Ticketing tools, again, familiarity with understanding the process, I think that can be taught. It's not necessarily a requirement. I made a similar mistake before when I had music playing and thought it was stream music. Yeah, I don't play stream music because I can't listen to it, so I never think to put it on for the stream either. So yeah, but again, one of the focuses I have for this tool is to get out of the way of the developer, right? So I don't want to necessarily, because if you look at what Jira does, right? Jira is not about the developer. Yeah, and that's the important thing, Apex, right? It's do you understand what workflows do you understand and what have you worked with? Because each organization is going to do different things, and that's part of the problem, right? They've kind of got away from this. So how much of the workflow do you understand? And realistically, when we're talking about the development side, we're talking about Scrum, which actually doesn't. It's only represented by this because this is a management view. Is it using for CI/CD too? I mean, CI/CD is just a component of the software development lifecycle, right? At this point, it's being able to do CI/CD is a nice to have on top of your development stack. It's a must-have for the most part, but it is a nice to have especially in early time, right? So I'm not focusing on my CI/CD components because it's not something. I'm not deploying this application yet. Later on, I'll need to consider how do I deploy this application, and that's CI/CD. So your software development practices, your agile practices, your scrums, etc. They only come in as far as how you're managing the work, how are you actually assigning the work and delivering it. So the CI/CD, that is, if you're new to development, if you're looking for your first job, etc., I wouldn't worry too much about understanding the tooling around CI/CD. I'd understand the differences and how it applies and how it can help, but I wouldn't necessarily focus too much energy on that. That's the sort of stuff that application companies should have figured out and be able to explain. So yeah, Jira, bye-bye spreadsheets. Yeah, exactly. It's a management tool over everything else, and that's why I'm focusing the way I am. For the game devs out there, you can set up a CI/CD pipeline to automatically push game updates to Twitch. That's a good use, right? If you're committing to a build, and you can build those tools, yeah. So the fun thing is when you get to developing software, you get into this realm of it's easier to go with the pain that you know. Thank you for the follow, Fortunes. I appreciate it. It's easier to go with the pain you know than fixing it and introducing tooling to take away the pain. It could come with it new pains. Sorry, I'm watching the recycle truck has to reverse up the street. Yeah, but a lot of companies will live with it because it is easier to go forward with it as it is and just make it work than it is to actually stop and fix a problem. So that's common. So yeah, I'm wanting to know why this doesn't show anything. This should have shown something. It can also be reliable too because you know when X what happens. Right, but a lot of companies don't introduce things because it's easier. Not to. App log out button. So ultimately, this is what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming for a design that looks a little cleaner. I gotta go. Have a nice time, TBD. Poolbots, thank you very much for coming in with that raid. Appreciate it, and have a great day. If I don't see you around. So when I sign in, I think the problem is I've got a different user. It takes 2 months to introduce a new thing, and that can delay the big project by 2 months, and we can't have a delay. Big boss company. Exactly. It's the value proposition of introducing new workflows and processes is often scary, and that's what oftentimes prevents us from moving forward with those tools. This should be showing something. Oh, there we go. Okay. So ultimately, this project should be doing, this is why I'm redesigning it, right? So it takes away these large white spaces, makes more use of the items, and redesigns all this. And that's kind of annoying. That doesn't go all the way down, but we'll figure that out afterwards. So the idea being that you go in and you see the tooling, so the planning items. You can go in and actually see the information. You can add the requirements. It's almost still working. That's pretty cool. A planning item is a title, a description, a date, and that date is a review date. And this is what is going to differentiate what I'm doing from tools like Jira, is that you will be constantly nagged if you go and put stuff in there and don't review it. You can't choose. So these dates here are the review dates. Okay. So right now that looks very amateurish. this is not what I want it to be. I've got to figure out why I don't want that. So that should be width 18. 18 is not a width, is it? Oh. Width. $16.20. 16 is too narrow though, I think. Maybe not. But again, that's probably 3.5 EM. Or 4. Okay. So now why is this stuck out over here? So I'm thinking a smaller nav down the side is where I want to head first. Again, accessibility wise, that isn't a very accessible approach. But I want to get a layout that works for me initially and then move forward with the rest of the application. Also, from a color perspective, I can't do this. I have to avoid doing this because I need to figure out the palette and name the palettes, because if I go to logout, right, you'll see this. Prepare, white screen incoming. I put light and dark mode in. I want light and dark mode. I like this, and I think if I do the research on most of the apps that have this sort of stuff, they do have large. Their default is large areas of open space with a lot of white backgrounds, etc. They don't often do dark mode as a primary thing. I might have to do a bit of research there as to, is there a reason? Is it necessarily just because that's how things used to be developed and that's how they've proceeded? Or is it just choice and that's what it is? So if it's just choice, then I can focus on dark mode first. But yeah, this is the way this works. You go in here, test at test.com, test. We can proceed and enter the information. This control initially, this is why I'm using a control set. This initially was a control that I built based upon the Tailwind UI components, and it was very flaky. But now I can choose, right, United States of America, right? Right, I can choose the countries, and these actually have the country codes. So yeah, I can hit cancel and go back. So yeah, lots of different things to build out here. I'm trying to build out this consistent UI. Trying to build out these components. That's going to bug me though. Why are you? Text. So let's have a look. So if we go up here, that's the icon. That's the list. So is it the fact that the list has got padding? Padding top 1 rem. Box sizing. Computed. Padding 1640. Padding top 16. Padding inline start 40. What gives it that though? Oh, just the fact that it's a UL? and one of these must give it that behavior. So thank you for the stream. I have to head out. Apex, thank you very much for coming hanging out. Sorry this was not as entertaining as the Godot streams, but I have to proceed with this as well. But we'll be back to Godot next week. Okay. ULs are padding. Okay, so let's test that. There we go. Okay. So just have to override the padding. Padding. Oh, it's a bit better, isn't it? It's amazing how just a bit of alignment can change the way you feel about something. I mean, I don't like it still, but it's yeah. Hover, text, gray. Yeah, it looks like it was top 16, left 40. Okay, so we got some at least highlighting there. Title equals planning items. Title equals initiatives. I don't want to have to go and do a full. Well, I'm going to have to do anyway an accessibility pass later. Well, things I've got to figure out. I've got to figure out how to get rid of these colors, right? How do I create a color palette that works for me? So the way this is themed, by the way, the way that the style thing works is I have in my assets, I created 2 CSS files. These CSS files actually pull the themes from PrimeNG itself, right? So these are just there for that. Then in my Angular JSON, I have this bundled, and what this is, it lazy loads them, so they actually are not loaded on default by default. And then in index HTML, you just name the one you want to use. And then in my theme service, which is, I will remember any second now, shared services. In the theme service, what happens is you just say, okay, and there's I created a component, a theme switcher component, so I can just drop that in. So just to prove that, I can do layout, default layout. I can go and put in app theme switcher there. Yeah. And now I have that. And I have light mode and dark mode, right? So again, we've now got a control to do that. And the theme service just gets the element and switches out light or dark there. So I can actually inject the theme service and ask if it's a dark theme as well. But the problem is I think this is not going to be perfect. Again, it's not picking up the system settings, so there's things to learn there. Because I should say, oh, well, the user's using a dark mode, therefore, because it is notifiable, I think. So I've got to figure out what that means and then default to that. And yeah. So, a little bit more work to do. But overall, it's starting to come together. This will be... so this will ultimately, I've got to create some sort of iconography or something there that will be that. I need to create like a logo or something that's going to work for me. Put that there. Log out. We can style that in a bit. Yeah, then we should be able to... yeah, whatever. So, I'm not sure if these flyovers will stay in there, whether they'll get swapped out and changed out, because that'll be another challenge. put all the controls in the way I've got them in the other screens. It's going to be difficult. That's interesting that sorry, that theme switcher bugged me then. Because it switches, because it's using this, it actually switches the font color. So when I switch to dark mode, the theme text is dark because it's based on a black background. So I actually switched that around. Ooh, I have a system settings detector thing, but in WPF app, I think it uses the Windows registry. But remember, it prefers something or other CSS media query. Yeah, because you obviously you can get the user's system preferences, because that's become an option, right? To choose what the system is versus light or dark. So there must be a way of detecting it as a media query. But right now it is working the way it is. At the very least, if I can switch between the themes, I can at least learn how, because I can create variables, right? So I can define where are you? Styles. So if I go here, I can always define variables. So this is the prime ng layer. So this is made to avoid overlap with Tailwind, so that I'm not overlapping. Otherwise, Tailwind will take over controls as well. So prime ng owns the style of the buttons and stuff. But I could always do a class, all right? Dot micro background color, and then background color is right. Whatever, I can define that again as the style that I'm using, but so much to do to get this to work properly. So I'll focus on the dark mode. I get the next step would be to get the items displaying in a way that is comfortable. Obviously, clean up this navigation at the top. Put my profile icon back in there, and yeah, figure out a logo at some point to put in here. Again, ultimately, this will actually be a switcher. I want this to be a drop-down menu that will say planning preferences, planning stories or ticketing. So that's the way that's going to work. But there we go. Okay. We need more app developers streaming at 9 a.m. So I'm going to take you over to Andreas, working on learning Blazor and TwitchLib. So that's pretty much on par for this stream. I'm happy with the approach I learned using CSS custom props, but the way I define the props and themes could use some work. It's just, again, it's its own art form. I think that these days when we say that HTML and CSS isn't programming, there's a lot of things to understand in the way that, even just because obviously Sass came around, and then we've got CSS, and now we've got variables in CSS, and there's a lot more dynamicism in the frameworks. I think it's not quite as simple as it used to be. It was much easier when I could just put a marquee on a screen. Yeah. So anyway, we're going to go right over to Andreas. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much for the conversation, and I appreciate everybody being here. I will be back tomorrow. I'm going to try and get more of this done off stream. I'd like to be able to say I'm focusing on at least visuals of things that make sense rather than just layout. But I'll do my best for that. And hopefully by the end of the week I have something functional. Coming up this weekend, I will probably be doing a longer stream at some point. I don't know when. This this weekend is my 5-year anniversary of being an affiliate on Twitch. So I want to do something at least for that. So it is I think I set it to Saturday, the actual anniversary, because it's basically, I think it's basically tomorrow or something. By the way, it's very close. So I wanted to do a longer stream for that. So we'll see if I can figure that out. But that might involve gaming at some point as well. So anyway, I will raid over. Thank you very much for joining me. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. One Lion, I hope to see you later. Depending on build. And I'll see you all later. Take care.